I grew up in Conway and lived there most of my life, but moved down here in 1974. It was a nice small town and everybody knew most everyone, you know, and it was just a real lovely place. That was what I think about it. And my father was in the grocery, had a grocery store in Conway, so I grew up working in a grocery store. I was born in 1918 in Conway, and of course grew up there. And as I finished high school, my father just made me a partner in the grocery business, and I stayed there until I was drafted into the Army in World War II. Being drafted, of course, I went through basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I got stationed there for 1 year. And then, of course, the invasion of France, I had to go overseas, and we landed on the beach of Normandy, and then went on all the way through France, right on into Germany. And of course, I got hit in Germany, was evacuated, and I spent 7 months total in the hospital in France and England, and ended up in Daytona Beach, Florida, the convalescent hospital. And I was discharged in October of '45. We all worked as a family business. And we finally, later years, it was right downtown in Conway, and later years, the parking situation was such, you know, people couldn't get to you downtown. We didn't have any parking area, so we had to sell the business. So we sold it in 1958. And I went on the city council in Conway and spent 20 years on that council. And when Carolina Pipeline came to Horry County, Conway, they hired me so I became a manager of that business, natural gas. And I stayed with them until I retired. This property here belonged, well, I was married twice. I had 28 years with my first wife and 30 years with my second wife. And my second wife's family owned this property. And after I got into the family, I was able to buy into the property, and so that's why we moved down here, because it was in the family. Just a fishing village, I guess you might say, and we didn't have the malls and different businesses that we have today. Something about that boat parade, we have a theme each year. We come up with a different theme. And the Boy Scout troop at Blaine Church, we sell T-shirts with the theme on it. And we let the Boy Scouts sell the shirts and give them the profit. And I want to show you at whatever time you like the T-shirt on my quilt. I got a shell hit right near me and knocked me out. The concussion knocked me out and got some shrapnel into my shoulder here. But I was picked up naturally and evacuated. But that was right at the end of the war. And the first doctor to examine me, check out and then examine me and says, "How long has it been since you had these boots off?" I said, "Between 2 and 3 months." He said, "Well, you're going to lose both feet, and I'm going to send you to the hospital in Paris to have your feet amputated." My feet had been frozen, so I spent the entire winter in France and Germany, out in combat, And after 30 days of therapy there in the hospital, they decided that they would not have to amputate, that they could get the circulation going back. And of course, all the skin was dead. They had to get it all again. And they flew me to a hospital in England. I spent 6 weeks in that hospital. Then a hospital shipped to New York and hospital trained to Daytona Beach for the convalescent hospital. And so a total of 7 months. Things like women having to get milk for their babies. We would get 1 case of milk is all we could get at one time, And like I say, we had to serve our customers because they couldn't get it anywhere else. We had to try to take care of them, which meant that we didn't have it for the public, but a certain amount. And people that would see a truck come that were delivering things, and they would come in, knowing that we just got things. But certain things that we wouldn't put on the shelf, we'd put under the counter. Of course, gasoline was rationed. You could only get certain amounts, and certain other things like shoes, for instance. You could get 1 pair a year. I mean, you had to get a slip to be able to buy a pair of shoes, After World War II, the demand was so great for things, it couldn't be produced fast enough for the demand. You just had to get in line to get something. Like if you wanted to buy an automobile, it might take you a year to put your name on it. And something, when I built a garage apartment, I needed appliances, and we had an appliance dealer there, and he told me, he said, "I've got a long list of names." But he said, "I have a store also in Myrtle Beach." He said, "I'll go to Myrtle Beach and get what you need, and it won't affect the people in line in Conway." And we went over and do that, and cover them up and bring them, so that people wouldn't see them like you'd stole them, or so. That's kind of the way things were. And that's the way I got my appliances, just from a friend that did it that way. I had bought a Dodge automobile before I went into service. It was a 35, no, I'm sorry, it was a 39 model. And because I paid $800 for it, new. Well, of course, I went into service, my wife had it then, and then I came out of service in '45, and I was offered $1,200 for it then. After that many years, and I only paid it, but the problem was you couldn't buy one. You had to get in, so it wasn't for sale. Of course, in Conway at that time, people out in the country didn't come to town every day. They worked and they came to town on Saturday. So Saturday was a busy, busy day because everybody, that lived out in the country come into town. And we had people at that store that on Saturday that would go to the movie theater at night, and they'd get out about 10 o'clock, and then they'd come to buy their groceries for the week after they came out of the movie theater. So we were open on Saturday from 7 in the morning till midnight. About half of your week's business was done on Saturday because that's when the people came to town. Things were so priced, it's just so hard to believe today, and for my children or other people to hear me say, what prices were back then, it's just hard to believe. Now, today, if you buy a T-bone steak, what is it, about $5 or $6 a pound? We sold it for 25 cents a pound. And the highest priced beef that we had was 25 cents. But the thing about it is, what did the person make? We had people working at the sawmill making $1 a day, you know. And I remember my fella, before he bought the business, he was manager of the company store, and his salary was $100 a month as a manager. And I remember as a young boy, as we were talking, you know, boys talking about the future, I said to them, I just wish I knew that I could have a guaranteed salary of $100 a month for my lifetime. Well, that was top pay. Yeah.
Right.
Children, that's the whole purpose of Shrine. And we have it's called a Shrine Temple. We have one in Charleston, one in Columbia, one in Greenville. And one in Charleston is now based on in Mount Pleasant. They had a place where we could buy 5 acres of land and have plenty of room, you know. It was once downtown Charleston, and that got to be such a problem, parking, you know, because we have thousands of guys that's Shriners. But I got, when I first got into Shrine, they invited me to a meeting, one of the unit meetings. We have units within the Shrine, you know, like, you know, you've seen the clowns or motorcycle units or the different things. And they invited me, and they were having an election that night. So one of my friends nominated me for Secretary and Treasurer. And the director says, I think we need someone that's a member of this unit. But he said, if you fill out this application for membership, well, we'll elect you Secretary and Treasurer. And that's the way I started and got involved in all of this. And then we have that South Atlantic Shrine Association, which covers 7 states now. And I'm the Secretary Treasurer of that. That's the South Atlantic. We want to meet twice a year. But now local groups and all, we meet, like next weekend we'll all be in Mount Pleasant. But see, the top man in the shrine is called a potentate. It's not called a president, it's a potentate. But he has his staff to work with. Well, I've been on the staff. There's 18 of them here. And I've already got a letter right there on that table from the man that's coming in January asking me to serve on his staff. With us moving through France, see, Germany had completely occupied France. When we entered on the beach in Normandy, on the English Channel, that was France. We had to go from there through France all the way right on through France completely to Germany. Well, we run into certain things, and this particular place was called the Swimano Dam. And it was very important that we captured that dam, because if they blew it up, you know, it would flood the entire area and cause us a lot of problems. So what we did, we're dug in back here now, some couple of miles back from the dam. And at night, I was one of the ones. One of my duties in the Army, I was a scout. So you know what a scout means, scouting out. Well, me and a few others would go down and lay on that riverbank at night and observe what the Germans might be doing, and so we could report next morning what was going on, whether they were moving troops in or moving them out or whatever. That's, I think, why they gave me that Bronze Star. We were able to capture that dam without the Germans blowing it. One of the big things was when we crossed the Rhine River at Remagen. That was one. My division we were the first American troops to cross the Rhine River. We happened to be the nearest ones there. And right on the other side of that is where I got hit, because the Germans, that was the Germans' last stand. In other words, after we crossed the river and got in, you know, we were in their backyard then, so the war started ending then, you know. But that was the Roar River, Emmanuel Dam. Three children born after my first wife and I were born before I went into service, and my children were after I came out of service. Then we started our family. And I had one daughter and two sons. My daughter died at 30-some years old with cancer. My two sons still live in Conway, and one of them is the municipal judge in Conway, and the other one is the deputy coroner of Horry County. My brother was, one of my brothers was a fire chief in Conway for many, many years, and my youngest son was on the fire department. And when my brother retired, my son became chief, and he has retired since then. He's now the coroner. That was something that people, it's kind of hard for them to understand, that my youngest son is a grandfather. She was in charge of the hospitality rooms. Her name was Lib, and one of the women told me, said, if you work for Lib, the only thing you have to know how to do is read, because she's going to have it posted what she's going to do all the time. I said, well, she's just that organized. The only problem she has is trying to get me organized. But she loved that shrine work. And you know, it was amazing that the shrine of North America, the head man of the shrine, when my wife Lib died, I got a letter from the imperial potentate of North America, you know, and you'd think, why in the world he would remember me? But when he worked with a group as large as I'd have worked with, and he had been to some of our meetings, and he remembered her too, because she was the type of person, if we were sitting around, she wasn't sitting over there in a chair in a corner. She was up here meeting and talking with you and meeting in there and talking with everybody, you know, and so naturally they could remember her that way, you know. She just really loved it. The gas company come into Conway. They hired me to manage that office. We had natural gas, but we also sold propane gas. Well, then, when our company at one time dug this deal up in the upper part of South Carolina now, up above Spartanburg, to store an underground cavern to store propane gas. And when they got the cavern built, and then they were inviting industry people who would be interested in to come and see it, you know. So they took all of us and made us to show them around, you know. Working with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, I've enjoyed that, and my wife did too. We spent a lot of time boating.
That's great.
And when we had fishing tournaments and things like that, you'd have let's see, when the gas company, the beer companies, that had sponsors, you know, and so they'd bring in certain of their people. Of course, Mickey Spillane was one of them, and we would entertain them while they were here. And I remember this one lady that was, and I don't remember her name now, but she was an actress, I mean, famous lady. And she was working for the gas company on the beer company. And we met her at the airport and brought her to the hotel and everything. And we told her we wanted to take the people out on the day before the fishing tournament, just, you know, and she didn't want to do that. And the company said, She'll do anything you want her to do. That's what we paying her to be down there. She don't have a choice about what she's going to do. She'll do whatever you want her to do. I had a life, you know. I had a wonderful life.